Hang on, it takes a minute just to do that.
Okay.
Oh, okay. So, thank you for joining us today. My name is Kathy Dyer. I'm the Executive Director for the Autism Society of Maine. We're having our Coffee with Kathy, and today my special guest is Dr. Nancy Ponzetti Dyer, and I will let her introduce herself to everybody, and I'll go over some technical things once she introduces herself.
Hello, I'm Dr. Nancy Ponzetti Dyer, and I am a retired psychologist. I worked for the Edmund Irvin Pediatric Center for the last 19 years before I retired, and prior to that, I did lots of other fun things with children and families who have autism or other developmental disabilities, and I had a wonderful gift of being given many ideas from those families, and I learned a lot from the children and the teenagers who I worked with, so hopefully some of that information can be helpful to those of you who are listening to this today.
Great. So before we really start, I know we're having some difficulties and we seem to still be navigating that a little bit. So if you do want to ask any questions, we ask that you use the chat box, which is really just the little bubble and it says chat. Don't use the question and answer box, use the chat box. That way we can get the questions. I know the other day we did this and people were jumping in the question and answer box and I was only looking at the chat box. So I want to make sure that you know the difference. So make sure you're using the Zoom webinar chat, not the question and answer box. Nancy and I will just start talking about, I had this topic that we decided on today was, you know, we thought a lot of the kids are showing a lot of anxiety and being anxious. And I thought maybe Nancy, you could kind of talk a little bit about that. This is pretty much a crisis in all over the world. So I'm sure kids are listening to the news. And so if you could just touch base on that a little, that would be great.
Sure, I'd be happy to do that. I'm going to start with just talking about what is anxiety, because everyone has anxiety. It's a normal part of our living. It's a reaction that our body has that is meant to be there because it helps us to survive. So for example, if you were going to cross a busy street, if you didn't have any anxiety, you may not retreat back when the car is coming. You may not stop and wait for a car because you need to have some anxiety in order to be able to respond appropriately to real danger. Some people don't like the word anxiety. They think of it as something that is only a mental illness. They don't think about it as it's really a part of your body. Some people rather call it the stress response, which is fine. You can call it either one because, well, as far as your body is concerned and your brain is concerned, they're the same thing. Hello, Kendra. Welcome. Stress and anxiety trigger a response in our body, and then our brain interprets what the response is. So our heart rate goes faster, our breathing becomes more shallow, our blood circulation changes, all in response to stress and anxiety. And it's only a problem when we begin to have high levels of anxiety without that thing in the environment that is supposed to trigger the anxiety. Now, these days, it's hard to know what's normal because none of us have experienced a pandemic. This is all of us. It's our first time. We are in a brand new territory. But the anxiety or the stress response, those are old emotions. They've been there forever, since the beginning of people. And so we can do something about those reactions. We can't change the pandemic, which is really hard because it is things that are out of our control are the things that create the most stress and anxiety for humans. So we can't change the pandemic, but what we can do is start to think about what can we control. And so I'm gonna say that probably people listening to this are mostly parents, but there may be some individuals who have autism or other developmental disabilities listening. And there may also be some children who might listen to this later. If there are, hi kids. I really love working with little children. I wish I could play with you right now and take your mind off the pandemic, but I can't do that. So instead, what I thought we could do, Kathy, depending on which questions come in, is we could start to talk about how do we control anxiety? And a little earlier when we're getting ready, I asked you the question I've been asking a lot of people. How is your stress level?
Yeah, I have a great answer for that. It's pretty high. You know, I think, Nance, as a parent of an adult with autism, it doesn't matter whether they're children or they're adults. A lot of them are going to be used to their routines, and we have removed everything from their routine. I mean, maybe they would go to school and then they would come home and they would have snacks and then they'd see Grammy and Grampy. It's gone. So
That's right. And for all of us, some level of predictability and routine helps us to feel calmer inside. And I think for the people with autism who I've known, they really, really like their routines. They don't want everything to be boring, but they really like to have some predictability. And for those people with autism who have difficulty understanding verbal language, it's even more stressful because they don't have the language to be able to be consoled by somebody telling them what's going on or reading some of the things that are less anxiety provoking. Now, on the other hand, some of us are reading too much and that can make us more anxious. If you read too much, if you read things that are incorrect, if you don't turn off your Facebook and your other media and have a break from it, you're going to find you have higher levels of anxiety. And if you don't sleep enough, you're going to have higher levels of anxiety. So what's happening right now, people have their routine thrown off. I think a lot of children who I've heard from are staying up later than they normally would. And so then they're not sleeping as much as they should, and then they're going to have more anxiety the next day. So some of the things that we can do to help anxiety are to try to, for parents, if you think about your child, what worked in the past? What worked when they were maybe not making the striving to reach the goals that they've met already, but maybe a year ago or maybe 2 years ago when they weren't doing quite as much for themselves as they are doing now. What worked at that point in time? And a lot of the parents I've worked with over time, we've noticed that when a child becomes stressed, that if you give them some supports that they had when they were younger or when they weren't so skilled, if you bring those supports back, it will help. So go ahead, Kathy.
yeah, and I'm just responding to, we've had a couple of questions and I think it's
good.
So we'll do them as two parts. So I know Kendra was asking that she's feeling that since the announcement that schools is canceled until September, they announced that. So schools aren't going to be going back until September. So parents now have this long extended time, and she's having a lot of families that are had a rough week and they're breaking down. So that's one issue. And then Brianna kind of chimed in and she's dealing with a, how do I tell a 2-year-old the death of a partner and her father passed away. On the 12th of March, she has very high anxiety. And now she's going to be out of school for 6 months. So I think we've got a long period. These are difficult issues. So I don't know if you want to tackle the first one and then talk about the second one.
Yeah, grieving is hard anyway. And for a 2-year-old, it's particularly difficult. When I was at the pediatric center, I had some wonderful resources on grieving for young children. And maybe what we can do is post some of those later, Kathy, or get those to Brianna.
Yeah.
I know that Mr. Rogers wrote a book.
He did?
Yeah, Mr. Rogers wrote a book on grieving that might be appropriate for your 2-year-old.
Tara, can you look for that? Tara will look and see if she can find it. If we find it, we'll post it here.
Oh, that would be great. And does the Autism Library have something they could send to Brianna on grieving?
Yeah, we have a couple books, I think, on grieving. Tara will be there. And we could also look at that and see if we can post some. So what we usually do, Brianna, is we post things in the chat box area. And some people were talking about, but when the webinar's done, I don't get it. But this will be posted on Facebook. So it's going to live on, this document. It won't disappear. But we can also, if you wanted specifics, Brianna, if you just send us your email, we can send you some stuff also.
So for a 2-year-old, it's always difficult to explain grieving. And most of the experts will say, just try to make it as developmentally appropriate as possible. I'm not sure how much language your 2-year-old has, but if the child's asking questions, then answer in the simplest terms possible and try not to use imagery that a 2-year-old might think is real. So for example, someone told their child, one of the books that I had read, someone told their child that that dying was like going up to the clouds, and then that toddler was found climbing a tree. So we got to be careful about using any imagery with children because 2-year-olds don't understand imagery. They're very concrete. So don't say the person went to sleep. Be really concrete. Say the person has died and they can't come back. You know, be really, and give only as much information as you need to satisfy the question at that moment. Because 2-year-olds are often very quickly onto something else, and it will come and go in their thinking. It's for the adult who's trying to explain that it's so heart-wrenching, I think. And the adult who's thinking about the future and the fact that, because more adults really understand that death is final, it's really much more heart-wrenching for the adult. The young toddler is really just looking for some answers right then.
I remember, Nance, when, you know, that was helpful for us when my father-in-law passed away, and letting my son know that, because he always experienced every time he would go to my in-laws' house, there was 2 rocking chairs, and Papa and him would always rock, and they would rock together. And so we made a social story, and we included that rocking chair in it. And we said, even though Papa's chair is empty, you know, you can still sit in your chair and rock, just to kind of tie it back to what he used to do. And that doesn't have to stop, but he's just not gonna see Papa. So
that was really nice. That was a really good way to do it.
Mm.
So since the announcement of no school, I think we're all having anxiety about that. We can hope that there will be some summer activities at some point. I'm not sure, Kendra, what your area is doing. I know in Winthrop, they've started to do more with Zooming, with the teachers Zooming to the whole class and activities of that sort. And I think every district's a little bit different, but it would be nice if we can get these teachers to contact the children, because it's a different kind of grieving. And we have no idea what's going to look like on the other end. We don't know if they're going to go in September and see their old teacher before they go see their new teacher. There's so much we don't know. There's more that we don't know than there is that we do know, unfortunately. So I think what we need to do just through all of this for each of us is take it one day at a time. And sometimes we need to just find things that can make us laugh. So one day last week, my husband said, it's a little bit like Groundhog Day. and it was kind of, I woke up the next morning thinking that, yes, it is like that movie Groundhog Day. And it just made me laugh, and it really helped. And today, when we were getting ready to be on, instead of being in the Zoom lens for Kathy, I put this guy up. And I thought, Kathy, I thought maybe you'd enjoy having Goofy as your guest today.
I'd love Goofy as a guest.
I think that we have to try to laugh, and we need to break things down one day at a time, but into small sections. So for some of us, making a list for the whole day is a great idea. Having a calendar for the whole week is a great idea. For many of us, that's way too much information.
Yeah.
So again, I go back to, what did you do when you started out? You had very simple things to help your child get through the day, to do tasks. So this is one for washing up, turn on the water. Break things into small segments and go back to something that you didn't maybe need before. For those of you with big families in a small space, if everyone's talking at once, everyone wants their activity, do simple prompts. Have a card that says my turn and have people pass it. You know, a lot of classrooms used to do this. They had the talking stick.
Yeah.
If you're the one with the talking stick, it's your turn.
Yeah.
We need those kind of things right now more than ever, because we want everyone to get a chance to have their voice heard if you're in a family. So schedules, personally, I have to make a list. If I don't make a list, I might not do anything. So today, to earn my tea, I had to get up and get dressed and shovel the snow off the driveway. And then I got to have my tea break. And I have a few more things before I get to have supper. So if you're a person who can read and write, then you can write your own list. You can just write the next 3 things that you're going to do. And it's amazing how if you continually do that, your anxiety level starts to come down, and you also have a sense of accomplishment. I think for a lot of people right now, it's hard to have a sense of accomplishment.
Can we touch base a little bit on one of the things that when we had done our webinar with Dr. Jim Ball on Wednesday, one of the things that came up there was one of the family members was looking at She wanted to know about her child's having a difficult time sleeping at night. And I think that's hitting a lot of kids for a couple reasons. So one for me is like, well, how late are they on their devices now? Because the devices are really becoming their go-to thing, because either they're Zooming with their teacher, or they're doing something. And maybe we could touch base on children who are having a hard time going to sleep and what we could do.
So again, go back to a previous level. First of all, turn off the TV and screens at least an hour before you're expecting to fall asleep. And it's easy to say, well, we don't have to worry about bedtime because we don't have to get up early for school tomorrow. But if you don't worry about bedtime, the sleep routine is going to be disrupted. So if it's reasonable for you to have your bedtime be a little bit later because you don't want to get up as early as you do on a normal school day, that's okay, but you still need a routine. You need a bedtime routine of cleaning up, getting pajamas on, quiet time, an hour without screens, and go to sleep. And whatever works for your family, whether it's singing a song or reading a story with dim lights, you need to do those things in order to help your child's body to relax. Now, if the anxiety level is way high, some of the simple relaxation apps are really helpful at a time like this. You want to have the lights really dim. You want to help talk your child through relaxing each part of their body, and taking deep breaths. And even as we do something like this webinar, I mean, you and I were a little bit wound up today because we're having technical difficulties and we thought people might be out there. How do we calm ourselves? We need to take deep breaths. When we're anxious, we have shallow breaths right here. When we're relaxed, our breathing goes all the way down to our bellies, just like little babies. If you look at a baby in a crib, their belly is what goes up and down. It's deep belly breathing. And there are a lot of nice apps now that help you to do breathing exercises. And singing a song, a quiet lullaby, things that sound old-fashioned, those things really work. Cuddle buddies. It's hard not to fall into the trap of having the child in your bed every night or doing things that you normally wouldn't do because everyone's more nervous. But the more confident that the parents are or that the caregivers are, the more confident, the less anxious they appear, the less anxious the child will be. So everyone's anxiety gets everybody else all wound up.
And I think that's a good point, because one of the things that I know we notice in my family is when I am either more anxious or when I feel like things just aren't quite the way I want them to be and I can't fix it, my son picks up on that. So sometimes I have to actually remove myself from the situation because I know he's picking up that piece. So do you find that, that's the best thing to do? Am I doing the right thing?
Well, it's so dependent on your family. So some families, you can actually have everyone come around and say, well, let's have a tea party. And then that will make everyone calm and it will help the parent be calm too. For some people, that's not true. So for example, I'm guessing if you tried to have a tea party with your son, he might get more and more anxious and want more and more from you. Mom, he might be tapping you and wanting you to help him with his iPad. So he may feel more relaxed, but you're not going to feel more relaxed. If that's the situation, then what you need to do is try to kind of bargain some time so that you do get some time alone. Whether it's going for a walk by yourself and then coming back, anything that would help you to feel like the demands are less on your attention and emotion. So I really, really feel for single parents right now. I'm not sure how they're doing this, but that's another reason why I say, get that bedtime, keep that bedtime, pretend they have to get up at 6 in the morning, because if you don't, then you're not even going to have your half hour alone at night.
Right.
And so we all need that. We need some time to refuel, regenerate. Then the other thing for parents is, okay, you do get your child to bed by 8:30. Awesome. Are you staying up till 11:30 or 12 reading a book or playing video games to get your mind off of things? Well, you're getting your mind off of some things, but you're not letting your body get the sleep that it needs. So you're setting up that vicious cycle. So you're up till midnight on Facebook or social media or reading or playing games, whatever you're doing. Then your child's up at their usual 7 o'clock. You haven't gotten enough sleep.
I think the other thing, and you just kind of mentioned, is is how much the media is playing into what's happening and our anxiousness and our anxieties. And I mean, I was just talking with everybody in the office about this, is that I limit myself to maybe a half hour every day just to listen to the news, because it's really not good news. And I just can't hear it over and over and over all day, all day, all day. So I don't know if you could touch bases on that. And
That's a really, really good point. I have not watched the news on television since this started. So I know I'm a little bit of a nerd and I'm an outlier in that regard. But what I do is I have the paper, I read the newspaper, which is pretty much bad news. And then I
like an
end with
actual paper that you got to flip open?
yeah, I do. I read the
Oh,
newspaper.
good
Yeah,
for you, Nance.
except on Mondays, because it's now online on Mondays. I do it on the paper. And I always end with the comics and the crossword.
Yeah.
Because it's 90% of it is bad news. There are some good news stories out there of people helping others and giving food, and there's some really good news stories as well. But if you can take that news at your own pace, then your anxiety level is going to be lower. It's still not good news. But if you're listening to a television station, especially the ones that say coming up next, and they have this awful music, this music that's designed to increase your anxiety. The COVID response is higher today. The number of deaths is increasing. You can feel it. You hear it in my voice. You can feel it with the music is coming, boom, boom, boom. And now after this message, more on this bad thing that's happening. And it's designed to increase your anxiety. So why would we do that to ourselves? Limit yourself to half an hour a day. You can get caught up. That's all you need. They're going to play the same stuff over and over again anyway. And then turn it off and then do something fun. It's really self-discipline. It's really hard when you're anxious to make good choices. So some people will undereat, some people will overeat, a lot of people won't sleep. It's really saying to yourself, wait a minute, I deserve to be treated better than this. Go outside for a walk if you can do it safely. We're fortunate we have a backyard, so I can go out there and putter around and dig in the dirt, except now it's snow again.
I know. Talk about, a Whopper is waking up to this morning. That I think that's going to bring a lot of our parents, some of them don't even have power right now.
No, our power was out for
stuck. They have no power.
Our power was out for 2 hours this morning, and I said, people don't need this on top of everything else. We have a couple trees down in our yard that will need to be cut up as soon as we can get out there and do that. Kendra said she liked Goofy, so he's going to come back for a minute. So what do you do? I mean, the Autism Society has some wonderful activities and links online.
Yep.
But also, I would hope people would think about this as a time to do the old-fashioned stuff. Mm-hmm. Have a tea party. Help your child to be the teacher, and the cuddle buddies can be the class. You can be one of the class, and the child can be the teacher, and you could take turns. You could be the teacher, the child could be the class.
It's that imaginary play that needs to come back into, right? Which our children have a hard time with, so.
Right, so we need to help teach imaginary play. And I said, I don't want to make this confusing, because I said, go back to a previous level of support. So maybe they haven't needed picture schedules for a year, and maybe you should use picture schedules again. But also, don't stop growing. This isn't a time to stop growing. It's going on too long for that. If it was 1 week, you could say, oh, take a break. Don't worry about anything new. But it's going on too long. And this comes back to Kendra's question about, we have the whole summer now. Do you want your child to learn nothing over the whole summer? No. So take one small thing and say, okay, before all this happened, we were going to learn how to tie shoes. Well, then use a little bit of each day to work on tying shoes. Use a little bit of each day for a self-care task or a help the family task. Because I think every child should be learning a help the family task, whether it's clear the table, put clothes in the laundry bin, whatever it is that is right for your family. What's the next goal, and take it and practice a little bit of it each day, every day. Because we don't want to stop growing during this. So I always have this thing that I like what I'm working for.
Yeah.
And this one's with Velcro. Kendra can make these. This one's with Velcro and pennies. I think that Melissa Allen made this at the Children's Center about 30 years ago. So I like to work for a cup of tea or a break. And you could decide what you're working for, and you and your child can decide what you're working for. And just, 5 little things to get there. And it's great because it's flexible. So for some children, you might have to work 10 minutes to get a penny. For other children, you might work 1 minute to get a penny. I'm going to work during our talk here, I have to have 5 questions in order to earn my penny. So I don't get to have a break unless I get 5 questions to answer. So I'm hoping more people are online and I'll get some questions, or maybe Kathy can. And if I answer a question, I'm putting on a penny.
Good for her for putting on her pennies. I was telling, Tara, usually I have a jar in my office and it has candy in the jar, a little Hershey Kiss or a little miniature bar or something. And my jar is empty. I was very disappointed in that today. I was like, oh, I'm not working for any candy. I think it's important that we treat ourselves, but we don't overindulge and overdo it. So that way this becomes a hard habit to break. And I don't know if you can talk a little bit about, because I myself have talked to a couple of parents and they're like, well, all they want to do is be on their iPad, or all they want to do is now watch this show that's on TV because they're home all day. And there was one great suggestion that I'll make before I ask you, Nancy, your opinion. But on Wednesday, one of the speech and language pathologists, because we were talking about the kids have their own iPads or their own laptops from the schools, but in their mind, they're getting to play games and getting to do things on them. And then when it's time to go to the schoolwork and do the school stuff, they can't make that transition. So her suggestion, and I thought this was really great, and it was Christy Laughlin, I think her last name was, she's speech and language. She said they have a mat that's green and a mat that's red. When the laptop is on the green mat, that's your time. You do what you need. When it's school time, we remove it and we put it on the red mat. That means it's school time. So I thought that was a great suggestion and a good visual.
That's very good. And the other thing would be in using that visual, which one's coming first? So if your child knows numbers, you might put the 1 on the red mat and the 2 on the green mat. First we're doing school stuff, then we're doing work stuff. And that's, if it works the other way, that's okay. But some kids don't transition from the free time to the school time as well as they would do schoolwork first and then do free time because that's what they were used to doing.
Yeah.
So,
and Jim mentioned that, Dr. Jim Ball, he was talking about, if your child has an activity that they just can't transition very well at, you might not want to do that activity because it's too hard for them. It's too difficult, and we don't want to put more stress and more anxiety on them by saying, oh yeah, you can do that, when we know getting them away from that activity is going to be a struggle. So, and this is where, as a parent, for me, I know we say this, but I also know the difficulty in doing that.
I had some very wise parents realize that Lego was causing such distress for their child many years ago that Lego went away for 6 months.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sometimes it needs to be that way.
Yeah. And it's okay,
it's
the
okay.
child will come back. The child will understand. In that moment, it won't be good. And we certainly don't want to see some increased behaviors, which I don't know if you want to dive a little bit into if we are seeing some increased behaviors. Do you have some things that you would suggest for parents, or?
Well, I always, Dr. Ball had some good ones, right? He's really good at this, but I always say that anytime we can prevent, we're way ahead of the game.
Yeah.
So this, just like you said, if you know something's going to cause trouble, why even offer it?
Right. Right.
But so anything we can do for prevention is really worth it. And prevention, a lot of prevention is predictability. So letting your child know this is what's going to happen first. This is what's going to happen next. And then if you keep doing it, they will believe you because they'll get to see that you meant it. This is going to happen first. This is what's going to happen next.
And it doesn't have to be in a big quantity. I think that's the other thing is, like, some parents will say, well, I want to do this, but I know he's not going to do 20 minutes of it. And it's like, then don't do 20 minutes. If your child needs to get from the kitchen, off the couch to the kitchen, and he successfully does that, then let him start that. And then you build from that. And I think sometimes parents think it's it's huge. It's like, you know, he's not going to do 20 minutes of that. Well, don't start with 20 minutes. Start with 3 minutes.
1 minute,
You know.
maybe 1 minute, like the tying the shoes.
Right, right.
Maybe it's really just touching the shoelaces for a week.
Yep.
That's okay. You're still working on tying shoes, and then next week you're going to cross them.
Exactly. And I think they think or they feel, well, that's not good. That's so slow, but that's what it's about with these kids is it took me 7 years to teach Ben how to tie his shoes. So it's funny you use that example. So when you hear 7 years, people will be like, what? I'm like, because it was that slow. And it was like, you know, we celebrated the small things he learned how to do. And he's a lefty. So that was the other thing is I'm a lefty. So getting him used to that. And when other people would teach them, they were righties. So that was part of our problem.
But you know, Kathy, if you gave up, Ben would just only be able to wear Velcro. And now he can tie shoes because for 7 years you didn't give up.
Right.
And that's, I think, for so many of our parents of children with autism, it's measuring success in a different way.
It is, very much so. And even though we are, and I'm sure most families are overwhelmed at this point. I don't even know if overwhelmed is the right word anymore. I think that we have gone so far beyond that, you know, families aren't understanding the schoolwork piece. And we talked about that of, you know, don't think you're going to be able to start being a teacher and do 6 hours a day with your child. Start small. If it's a 15-minute thing, if it's a 10-minute thing, build from that. And you'll never reach 6 hours. I don't think any parent will get there.
Well, and you know, what is schooling and what is learning?
Yes. Yes.
So, you know, the parents who've been homeschooling probably feel like, well, we certainly have an advantage right now, although I believe that they're hurt by their social activities being cut out.
Yeah.
But so most parents don't have a curriculum. A lot of teachers are sending things to parents, but it may be that schooling is having somebody help you follow a recipe to make lunch or dinner.
Yes, I think that's
me. If the child helps to make dinner, that's a half hour of schooling.
Yep.
I think I just got another penny. I'm waiting for more questions, though. Do we have any more questions?
He's going to be getting her cup of tea here. I'm going to have to owe you some tea, Nancy. I do think, you know, cooking is one of these activities that any child can help with. And I know for my son, cooking has always been his, because he knows there's something that comes after cooking, eating. So there is a motivation behind it, but he's also learned over the years that sometimes we cook something and we don't eat it right away. So if we make cupcakes in the morning, we frost them later and we have it later on. So he's learned that did not come easy. So, but I think this is a golden opportunity for families to go back to the family meals around a table, go back to cooking. You can teach math with cooking. You can teach reading with cooking. It's just, there's a lot of things with cooking that you can teach in small steps. They don't have to be, you know, a lot.
So Kendra noted that they're calling this crisis learning, not homeschooling. And it is different than homeschooling, but I like to think of it as family learning or family teaching time. So my daughter, I have a 6-year-old grandson and my daughter, and he live in Germany, and they've been having mama school. So it's mom's way of teaching is different than his other schooling, but they have, it's family learning. And there's a lot of value in family learning. Remember, it wasn't too long ago that before we had an industrial nation. I mean, it seems like a long time ago to us, but that people learned at home on the family farm, right? It was family learning time.
Yeah.
And you're learning self-care skills. If you're lucky enough to have a parent can help you learn to do academic tasks, then you're doing some reading and some more formal written work. That's okay too. But if not, you're still learning very valuable life skills. And so family learning is not a bad time.
No. And one of the other things I was going to just bring up is, again, during this time of when we're supposed to be, you know, in isolation, we've had a lot of parents say, you know, the isolation piece is what we've felt for a lot of our lives. And now everybody else is just now realizing, oh, you know, this is what it's like to stay home because either your child has a hard time in communities where there may be sensory issues, there may be just a lot of hustle and bustle and or it's too loud, or so it's like they're feeling like people are now understanding what it's been like in their families, and I hope that it's not just left like that. I hope that it's brought beyond that too. We need these families to be more in their communities. So maybe this is going to open up this door for other families to say, no, we can't have families in isolation. They need to be out in the community. So I'm looking at the lemons into lemonade.
Feeling like, wow. So just look at your neighbor and say, wow, they were this isolated all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's the message we should try to, let families know, so let me see, there's another question here, and that comes from Kendra. Can you read that, Nance, or?
Yes, I can. So I'm not sure that everybody can see it, but there's a family with 2 children. The older one is doing fine and the younger one is 4. And the 4-year-old is copying some behaviors that we would hope they wouldn't copy, because the sibling is really angry about not going to school and is not understanding no matter how much mom explains it. This is so hard, and the family is trying to not end up with the child that has the most behavioral difficulties end up in a psychiatric hospitalization, because that's happened in the past. So I am guessing that they've already tried to see if somebody from the school could maybe zoom in and explain that there's no school for everybody. But if not, that would be one of the things I would try to do. I'm trying to think where else the client could see that other people can't go to school right now either. The Pine Tree Society has been doing has been doing some Zooms with Pine Tree, like kids that have gone to camp. And I don't know if the school is doing any Zoom, it would be really nice for that client, but I'm not sure if the mom is able to access that.
4-year-old, I'm wondering if are they in public school, Kendra, or do you know if they're in Child Development Services, CDS? Because I think sometimes if they're not in the public school, then they weren't sent home with a laptop, and that's have a lot of families with no internet, and
we need an extra penny for this, and Kendra gets 2 pennies for trying to help. Yeah. So the child is not doing Zoom. The idea of Zoom might be overwhelming to the child, but the way I would get around that is I would ask if the mom's able to do it, to just put the Zoom on. And I would put the Zoom on, not force the child. I would just put the Zoom on, and as the mom, I would say, the child's name is not able to Zoom with us today, but I wanted to let you know that we're glad that you're doing Zoom, and it may be sometime in the future this child will be ready to Zoom with us. Because a lot of times, if the Zoom is there a day, and then it's there another day, and then it's there another day, the child may become gradually more willing to join in. But what I would not do is try to force it. And so the mom shouldn't stress herself out about what if the child doesn't come to the Zoom meeting. The mom should just put the Zoom on, make it available, and then try not to push it.
I agree. I think it's one of those hard areas where you don't want to force the child to participate in something. But like you said, Nancy, I think sometimes, you still need to continue with something, even though they're not going to participate, just so they can start getting used to it. And then maybe they will participate. I mean, think about everything that's been removed from that child. And that's where my mind goes is, everything has been removed. And not only has it been removed, you can't leave your home. I mean, it's
very typical of young children and older children who have autism to blame the mom. When things go wrong, it all gets directed to the mom, because the mom is the primary attachment figure. And if the mom doesn't feel comfortable putting the Zoom on because she's afraid that people will see that the child won't come, or he'll be loud, or whatever, or she will be loud, what I would do is start with something like Autism Society recorded some stories being read.
Social stories. Stories about what autism is, and
some things that you can play over and over again, and I would have the mom start with those. Just turn them on. Don't force the child to look at it. Turn them on. then turn it on again and turn it on again another day. And just start to let the child get used to this idea that learning can be through the computer sometimes if we can't go into the classroom. And wow, look at all these things that are on the computer. That's because nobody can go to school right now. And I think teaching the word pandemic is really helpful.
We do have a social story on that on our website underneath the family resource page. We have a social story that is visual, and it talks about what the coronavirus is, and with pictures and everything.
So when they get, a lot of the kids that I've worked with, so for example, when I was doing my work for 30 years, a lot of the children would call me Dr. Ponzetti Dyer because they can say Ponzetti Dyer. And so they can say pandemic. A lot of our children with autism have limited language, but they can do big words.
Yeah.
And when we talk about pandemic, and then when they find out I've never been in a pandemic before, and look how old I am. No one's been in this pandemic who's living now. You know, people who had experienced the plague aren't alive. You know, this is a brand new thing for everybody. And anything that would help that fourth grader understand that maybe would help with coping. I really do feel for that mom. The only other thing I can suggest for her is even if the kids aren't going to be able to sit still and be quiet, tell her to come to 2 o'clock coffee with Kathy because she's a mom who understands.
We can work functionally really good, and we can have this interaction. It's lovely, and we're still figuring things out. But I do think that, yeah, talking to another parent who really does understand and says, yeah, I've been there. I know what that's like. I always found was very helpful when my son, as he was growing, and he was diagnosed very young. So, you know, we've been in this for quite a long time, and we've gone through a lot of hurdles that sometimes parents just don't understand, and they go, I don't think we'll ever get through this. And you do. You get through it. You come out on the other end stronger. And one of the things I saw the other day that I thought was very nice was people were talking about, you know, I feel so bad about the individuals transitioning to middle school, transitioning to high school, transitioning, you know, out of college. And they said, let's look at that as a different way. Let's look at that as those kids are going down in history. You will never see children going through this. They are going to be in the history books. Things that are happening now are going to go down in history, and they're going to say, remember 2020 pandemic, you know, and this is what the kids, you know, were all involved with. I think that is something else that, you know, maybe we can help them. Even somebody mentioned that they were doing a time capsule, and they were writing a letter to put it in this time capsule. And maybe that could be another way for individuals to say how they're feeling and putting it away and saying, oh, here's my feelings, this is how I feel. I don't know. So
it's there's things that we want to do to keep things as normal as they could be, but there's so much that's changed that we are also given the flexibility to make a new normal. So for example, a lot of families have decided that they're too tired at supper time to make a big meal. So they're doing their big meal in the middle of the day.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's the way it used to be in the old days.
Yes.
Everybody had their big meal in the middle of the day and a small supper. And if you're really tired by 5 or 6 o'clock, it really makes a lot of sense to have done a bigger meal at lunchtime. If you have hungry kids, they can sit down, you can have your big meal. That's when they can help. You can have a big dinner by 1 o'clock and then a light supper, a lighter supper and a snack. So there's some things you can do to take advantage of this. The other families, besides the single parents who are really struggling right now, are the ones who are trying to work from home and do the family learning time or schooling. That's a real challenge too. And that's another reason why if a person's working from home and they have flexibility about their hours, a bigger meal in the middle of the day might work out so that they can then keep their children active, busy, have that big meal. Then if the child can play outside with one parent, the other parent can get some of their work done and they can swap off. There's a lot of challenges that we haven't even begun to touch. And I think are we running out of time, or are we okay?
Yeah, we're getting close to the end here. I didn't know, does Brianna or Kendra have any final things that you're looking for, and anything else we can help answer you? I do enjoy having you know, people come on as guests talking about, you know, how we can help families. I mean, I really do think that the only way we can help families is to talk about it and to put it out there. And like this is being recorded, it will then go on Facebook. It won't be live, but people will be able to look at it, and hopefully we've come up with a number of different ideas that will help those families. So do you have a final thought, Nance?
I have a final thought. Do I get to put my last penny on?
You can, yay!
Okay. So my final thought is to come back to it. If you didn't get anything else out of this, small little steps, small schedules, goals for yourself and your child. For me, sometimes the goal is I've got to get dressed today. I can't spend another day in my pajamas.
I know.
And then it's the relaxation. So please use relaxation, whether it's from yoga, from anywhere you've learned deep breathing and muscle relaxation exercises, whether it's the warm-up you did for your high school sports, whatever it was. Use that now because you need it more than ever. Take that deep breath, get it all the way down to your belly, breathe in through your nose and out through your mouth. And then work your muscles, and from the head down to the toes, tense and relax every muscle in your body. And enjoy at least 5 minutes of relaxation every day.
And if that doesn't work for some of you families, please take your cup of coffee and your box of cookies and give me lock the door. that can help out too. So thank you, Nancy, for coming on and being with us. I didn't see any messages besides Kendra saying thank you for doing the sessions. Glad you earned your tea, Nancy.
Thank you.
I hope it was helpful for you too. We will post this anyway, and we can talk about if anybody has anything, then just send us an email. We're still here. We're still willing to print off pictures for you if you need them. We have the PECS program, and we've been doing that for some families, so let us know. And we'll post our emails.
The other thing you can do for families, if they don't have stress balls, right?
Yeah.
You might be able to help them out with that.
Yeah, if there's something, we have some fidget toys here that we can also send if you're feeling your child needs some. Yeah, we can do that too.
Okay. Well, thank you, Kathy. Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot.
And what's next? Who's your special guest next Friday?
Next week, join us for occupational therapist Karen Hussman from the University of New England. She's going to talk about how you can do some OT in your home during these times.
Great.
Okay.
Thank you,
guys.
Bye-bye.